Hello, everyone. My name is Oliver Tappe. I'm anthropologist at the University of Heidelberg with a project on artisanal and small-scale mining in Laos. Today, I will do a little interview with my colleague Robert Pijpers from University of Hamburg, who is an expert on small-scale mining in West Africa. And this interview is part of my class of the Anthropology of Mining that I'm currently teaching at the University of Heidelberg Institute of Anthropology. So thanks, Robert, for your time and sharing your experience of being an anthropologist in the mines of West Africa.
Thank you for inviting me also.
No, it's a pleasure. Well, first question would be, so what was your interest in mining, or what makes especially small scale mining such a fascinating and also urgent topic for anthropologists?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's two parts to this question. First of all, my own interest in small scale mining, or how this was triggered. I have a personal history or family history in Sierra Leone. And when I started studying in Leiden, anthropology in Leiden at the time, that was just a few years after the end of the civil war in Sierra Leone. And as you and as many people know, diamond mining played an important part in the Sierra Leonean civil war. I won't go into detail there. But it's kind of triggered my interest in what does mining mean to different people? What does mining do? In this case, then the role of diamond mining in Sierra Leone's past. My work didn't focus on the war as such, but rather on how mining provided a livelihood to people mostly living in rural areas. Often also an additional or an alternative livelihood to other forms of generating income, for example, through subsistence farming. So this is a bit how my own interest in mining started, or in mining in West Africa started. And in general, what I think for why mining is so important for anthropology, small scale mining, but also industrial mining or large scale mining. I mean, first of all, resources play a very important part in our society. Everything that we see around us, that we use, that we touch, is made possible or is created by using mineral resources or by using specific resources. These resources need to be mined. They need to come somewhere. So whatever we do, mining is really a very intimate part of our everyday lives. And of course, that is the case for us, but for those millions of people around the world who engage in mining as an activity, so who produce these resources that basically make the world go round. For them, of course, mining plays an even bigger or even more direct role in their everyday lives, giving hopes, desires, opportunities, but also creating new challenges, creating fears also sometimes. So I think mining is such an important part, or mineral resources are such an important part of our world and of society, that I think for anthropology it is very important to contribute to debates by showing how people doing mining give shape to this activity and what it means to their everyday lives and their social relations.
Yeah, thanks. Speaking of Sierra Leone, this specific post-conflict setting, how was it to enter this field, this society with really fresh memories of civil war, and then even more in the setting of mining that's probably also quite sensitive?
Yeah, actually it was surprisingly smooth. Well, now should explain in more detail. So I went to Sierra Leone. I went back to Sierra Leone after the Civil War in 2003. And of course, then memories of the Civil War were still very fresh. And I mean, the devastation was really visible all around you. And then when I started my research on diamond mining, that was in the context of my MA. That was in 2008, 2009. So already quite a few years after the end of the Civil War. Of course, still the Civil War played an important role in society. But I think at the time, kind of the discourse, both at national level politics, but also at local level, was really about, in the context of mining I'm speaking of now, was really about how resources generated new opportunities again. So like from a sort of conflict diamonds or conflict resources discourse, it had started to shift a little bit to a discourse on resources for development, if we can use that term. And to access the diamond mines, that was in the eastern province of Sierra Leone, was actually, to some extent, it was remarkably easy. And to some extent, I found out that I was also being watched, especially in the beginning. So when I entered the area, I went with a local bus. I was already at, so in Sierra Leone, when you enter new administrative areas, there are often checkpoints. I was stopped, I was asked out, spent 1.5 hours in a small hut with 2 police officers wanting to know what I was going to do, and my fellow travelers were not so happy with the police officers. They didn't blame me for their delays, but they blamed the police officers, and they were really interrogating me, like, what are you going to do in this area, knowing it's a diamond mining area. And well, eventually I could continue my journey, and then entering Kono, or entering Koidu town, the town where I did my research, that there were mines everywhere. You are on the road and you look to the left and to the right, you see mines. So yeah, on my first day, I just walked around, and then I went to the mines and started talking to people, and that was that was remarkably easy, and it was smooth. And of course, it took a while before people started sharing more their experiences and their concerns. And just as in any case, when you do participant observation or when you do research anywhere, to build relationships with people takes a while. But it kind of getting this initial access was relatively easy, although there was also suspicion. So there are 2 examples that I remember quite vividly. The first was when I entered one of the mining sites around Koidu town. I saw people doing a lot of stuff very quickly, and they were putting away some of the things they were having in their hands, and they were just standing there. And well, I had seen them mining from a distance, but when I came closer, all the mining tools were actually gone. So the sieves, the shovels, everything was gone. And after a while, I mean, we talked, and after a while, they had verified who I was, that I was a researcher and not somebody from a government agency controlling what they were doing. So then the mining tools started to appear again. And so actually they were worried that I was there controlling them, because of course the mining in this area, most of it takes place in a sort of informal, semi-illegal sphere. So of course I had those experiences as well, where you had to really carefully explain to people what you were there to do, and what not. So who you are and also who you are not. In this area also there's a very strong presence of Lebanese diamond dealers who they have quite social and economic powerful positions. And after a few months into my research, I also found out that the Lebanese community already after 2 days had cross-checked who I was, what I was there to do, if I was a dealer or a buyer or a seller. And I mean, that all took place sort of in the background. I didn't know until after a few months. So yeah, there were moments where I was also being watched. I have also been interrogated by officers of customs stationed in Koidu. So there have been many moments where I've been interrogated by officials. Actually, just 2 years ago or 3 years ago, it was before, was my last fieldwork before COVID started. I was staying in Tarkwa. It's one of the major gold mining towns in Ghana. And I was staying at a small hotel somewhere in the town. And at one point at 3 a.m. in the morning, I heard a very loud knocking on my door. And of course, I was half asleep. Well, I was asleep, and then I woke up. I was still half asleep. I asked who it was on the other side of the door, and I opened, and then like 3 quite large police officers were standing there. And actually, they were also coming to check who I was and what I was there for. So I think, and I've also heard similar experiences from colleagues working elsewhere. So I think also the kind of this mining environment can also be a very tense environment with a lot of social control, with a lot of interest, of course, with quite a lot of money going around. Some things happening in a semi-legal sphere. So it's not always easy to maneuver in this very complicated and often tense social setting.
But you mean that it was easier that people might expect in a setting like this post-conflict Sierra Leone and diamonds involved. So it's you made friends or everyday interactions, relations.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
quite quickly.
Yeah. These experiences with government officials, I mean, they were, of course, they were confronting and also sort of a reality check of the kind of environment in which you are. But both in my research in Sierra Leone, but also in my research in Ghana in the past and now, it's often very well possible to enter mining sites and to talk with people, to develop also long-term relationships with people, to visit mine sites more often. Of course, not all parts of a mining site are accessible or are equally well accessible. In my current research, there's a lot of mining taking place underground. Well, there are certain other challenges of access when you do research on underground mining. But on average, I've always felt very, well, let's say it like this. I've always had to, of course, you need to explain yourself very well. You need to explain very well what you're coming to do. But I've always, in 90% of the cases, I felt very welcome. And I've also been visiting the same sites over and over again. Developing also very good professional, but also personal relationships with different miners.
So you were not seen as a competitor or someone who wants to interfere in the trade, in the local mining or trade. You mentioned the Lebanese traders. I can imagine that they were particularly suspicious about a white guy coming to that area.
Yeah.
There's potentially a lot of money involved.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, different actors had these kind of concerns, and also people sometimes thought, oh, it must be someone who's here to buy gold, or it must be someone who's here to buy diamonds, or so of course there are always these expectations of people, of who you are and what you are there for, and based on the interactions people have had before with outsiders or with strangers, there are always certain roles that can be allocated to you, and they might not always be correct, and you might need to explain very well then what your interest is of being in this environment if you're not there for buying something or for selling something. Exactly. But I found that it usually worked well, And there have been very few occasions where I eventually didn't, where I didn't get any access at all. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. And how can we imagine everyday life in the mining town in Sierra Leone? Was it kind of small town with scattered mining sites around, and where the miners meet afterwards to have a beer or something? So what was your daily routine, so to say, in this particular site?
Well, these mining towns are so diverse, or when I say mining towns, these mining environments are so diverse. So in Sierra Leone, I was based in a larger town, or actually in Sierra Leone, it's called a city. And then I usually traveled by foot or by motorbike to the different mine sites that were sometimes right at the border of the city or of the town, and sometimes a bit further into the bush. But to say how everyday lives look like, so sometimes you have like really small villages, with maybe 20 houses, sometimes brick houses, sometimes mud houses, where people really do mining immediately in the vicinity of the village, sometimes also in combination with agriculture or with other kinds of activities. But in Koidu city itself, miners lived in the town, and in the morning they would go to work, and in the evening they would come back home and rest. In terms of, of course, people hung out together, but I think in this particular case of Sierra Leone, most miners went to the mine site in the morning, and they went home at the end of the day. Sometimes together, sometimes alone. But there wasn't such we go to the, like, it was not like it's a group of colleagues organized in a team, and they go to the mine site together, and at the end of the day they drink something. Anyway, is there money for a beer or for any other drink is also, of course, the question. The environments where I worked in Sierra Leone were very poor environments also. But so there it was really like people traveled to the mine site, and in the afternoon or in the evening they traveled back and rested. It's very hard work, of course, that people do, and they also need their rest. So these mining environments where I work, they really range from really, let's say, tiny villages where people walk a couple of 100 meters to a mine, and they dig a pit and hope to find something worthwhile, to towns with, let's say, maybe a couple of thousand inhabitants, but also major mining towns, like where I work in Tarkwa, together with colleagues from the Gold Matters project that I'm part of. This is like, it's an industrial mining town where there are 3 major industrial operations, but where there are also many artisanal and small scale operations taking place. So mining environments are very diverse. I think that is the most important, and and to kind of say, okay, this is what the typical mining environment looks like. Well, I think for a typical mining environment, the work is very hard. That's everywhere. And people need their rest at the end of the day. But of course, there are many social relations. Like in some mines, people might work together with brothers or with their parents. One of the men that I work with a lot in Ghana, in Tarkwa, he's a sort of on-site supervisor or on-site manager of a mining operation that is a joint venture between Chinese investors and Ghanaian miners. His sons work in the same mine as where he works. And there also, it's an underground mine, it's gold mining. In that case, he's kind of the manager of the whole operation, but in that case there are also like sort of side operations taking place in the same site. So you have the Chinese Ghanaian operation, but then part of the underground environment is allocated to a different group that might have negotiated access with the manager in that area. Another part of the site is given in use, or sort of access is given to yet another group, maybe because of a personal relationship with one of the managers, or maybe because of a history of mining and the new company didn't want to remove these people from the mining site where they had been working. So mining environments are very, very, very diverse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really important point. Also, I believe that's quite challenging to unravel these relationships in mining environments, including these gray zones between small scale and large scale mining. Mm-hmm. So to not really separate, but there are a lot of interconnections and also legal ambiguities that people need to maneuver. And then for you to get an idea about these relationships, did you work with the people? Did you develop also some skills in mining, or did you interview the people separate from the workplace? So
well, some parts of the work I participated in, at least sometimes. So I spent a lot of times being present at mining sites. There are always people, being around, taking a break, or working, and then you talk while they work. Sometimes you participate. You also take a shovel, or you also take a sieve.
But you didn't find a diamond.
I didn't find a diamond. So I think also that would have made matters very complicated. Here there's, so I spent a lot of time on mining sites. I mean, most of my work takes place on site. And then with some people that you get to know with better, you also travel with them. For example, when they go home, you visit them at home. But most of my work takes place on site. Of course, then when you are doing research on a type of mining that takes place on the surface, then this kind of presence when action happens is a little bit easier than you do research on mining that takes place underground. So my research on mining in Sierra Leone, well, first small-scale diamond mining, but later also large-scale iron ore mining, those operations were all on the surface. My research in Ghana is to a large extent on gold mining that takes place underground. And there are more limitations towards in terms of access. I mean, sometimes it's simply dangerous to go underground. So you don't want to go underground. Sometimes it is not allowed to go underground because people also know it's dangerous, so they don't want you to go underground. And then you need to find different ways of working together with people, of getting an understanding of what takes place in an area that is not so easily visible for your own eyes, but that you still somehow want to understand. It's actually a paper that is forthcoming with Sabine Luning, a very good colleague of mine, and we work together in Ghana on especially this issue, like how do you make visible, how do you understand and articulate kind of working domains that are not easily accessible because they are underground. Then you can work together with people in terms of, you can ask people to make pictures, to make drawings, to explain what they see. or you ask people to make pictures and then you have conversations afterwards about these pictures. Okay, what do I see on this photo? What are you doing there? And how does this look like? And where possible, you can try to go underground. I mean, there have been a few mines in Tarkwa where I've also gone underground. Not for longer periods, but I mean, people need to really take you there, and they need to kind of guide you through through this environment and stay with you, because of course, the people you work with feel then also responsible to you, for your well-being. But there have been times where I visited underground environments for an hour or maybe 1.5, taking a lot of pictures, making videos, talking with people as far as possible. Trying to get an understanding of what this means, and also to have kind of this experience in order to talk about it when you are again on the surface, and to be able to have a conversation about what takes place in this domain.
I guess it's really crucial to make this experience by yourself, being in a narrow shaft and with I don't know, difficult to breathe, things like that. I can imagine it's can be quite unpleasant doing research underground, right?
Yeah, I think so. The places that I visited in Tarkwa, the underground mines, they were, I mean, of course, there's always a level of discomfort, but incomparable with what the miners experience. But those underground mines, they were actually quite spacious. In Tarkwa, many artisanal and small-scale miners are operating in abandoned industrial mines. So often there is, not always, but if the mining operation is in a bit more of an advanced state, there's, for example, ventilation, there's electricity provision, so it's not completely dark. Sometimes there's already a little cart going down to kind of bring to the surface the stones or the rocks that are being excavated. So these were slightly larger mines where you could walk. In Ghana, the kind of the really narrow underground mines that are made by artisanal miners, they are, I mean, I know people who have been inside these mines, but they're mostly inaccessible for us. So there you really depend on collaborations with miners themselves, to gain an understanding. The larger mines, there, if you know people a little bit well, of course, they're not taking somebody down who has been there, who's coming for the first time. But if you've been coming more regularly for an extended period and you have developed relationships, then there might be people who say, okay, I will take you down, I will show you around, and then we go up again and we talk about it, something like that. But I found it not, I mean, I didn't act because I didn't go into these kind of mines where you really have to crawl on your belly to get to the ore. I mean, this is something I wouldn't do. I think also is actually personally, I would find it also irresponsible, taking into consideration that also at home there's a family that needs and also people would not so easily allow that. I've been at many sites where miners said that, no, this is not a place for you to go down. You can't. In the larger mines that was possible, and it was very interesting to just experience some of these working conditions and to understand that really the work people do is, it's really a very tough work.
And speaking about tough work, we had the topic in our seminar, the topic of gender relations in mining contexts. On one hand, the idea of stereotypes of masculinity associated with mining work, but then also gender divisions of labor on the workplace in artisanal and small-scale mining, and households work together in rural areas where they may or may not also be involved in agriculture, this combination of agriculture and artisanal mining. How did you experience like shifts in gender relations, or also these stereotypes of mining as a kind of male work?
Yeah, I think I have here two kind of main experiences. One from Sierra Leone and one from Ghana. I think first of all, what is important to stress is that these gendered work divisions or gendered labor relations, they're very dynamic. So it's very well possible that when you observe a specific kind of configuration at one point in time, that if you go there 5 or 6 years later and there have been changes in economic situations, in technological situations, these configurations can have shifted. I will come back to that. So in Sierra Leone, when I did my research on diamond mining in 2009, there have been a couple of sites where I went to frequently where gold and diamond mining took place simultaneously. This was a site at a river. And it was quite interesting to me because the sites where I had been to previously, they were all very male dominated. And in fact, there were only men working there. Sometimes women came to the site, but that was mostly women who came to sell something to eat or other things to buy. So the sites around Koidu, the diamond mining sites around Koidu, they were male. And then I traveled a bit further away to some sites at the river. And sorry, I think the connection was gone for
no, it's okay. I could
understand
everything.
Yeah, so that site at the river, I saw really a lot of men and women working side by side. And of course, it triggered my attention and my interest. And it turned out that mining there, so the material was taken from the bottom of the river by divers. So there were men who went basically down to the bottom of the river, and they would excavate or they would remove layers of material. And it turned out that before they would reach the layer of sand that contained diamonds, they had to dig through a layer of sand that contained gold. So they were taking up buckets with sand where there was some gold, and they deposited on the riverside. And women were mining this material. After they took up the layer with gold, they would reach the layer with diamonds, and that they would mine themselves. So it was sort of almost as if the resource itself, gold and diamonds, were also gendered, with gold sort of belonging to a female domain and diamonds belonging to a male domain. Then at another site, I encountered somehow the same kind of situation where it was a gold mining site. There were quite a number of women, but there were also men. So I explained to them my experience that I had previously, and they said, well, you know, now because of the global crisis, I mean, that was so 2009, around the time of the global financial crisis, diamond mining is becoming so hard. So we are moving into gold mining. But you know, this gold mining is very different. The kind of money is different. It's and then people explained that sort of the money that people would earn with gold was considered a money that you couldn't spend like at will, freely, the way you wanted, but was more kind of responsible money that you would use for sending your children to school, buying things for the household, maybe also investing a little bit in agriculture. Whereas the diamond money, that of course was then largely made by men, it was a money that was great and that could, I mean, it's more money when you find a diamond. but also money where it was less looked down upon, when it would be spent on, I don't know, going and drink a lot, or buying a new motorbike, or more sort of frivolous spending was more accepted when it came to diamond mining. So it turned out that there were different ideas about what resources meant, what the kind of the returns from mining these resources could do, what it enabled men and women and families to do. And this kind of thinking and labeling, socially structuring resources and money is something that has been observed throughout West Africa, actually also by a German professor who has worked and still works on artisanal and small-scale mining, Katja Wertmann. All of these works show kind of different kinds of configurations, but they all illuminate the kind of gendered divisions in different kinds of mining. Some of my colleagues, also in the Gold Matters project now, where we focus on West Africa, well, that project that I'm part of focuses on the Brazilian Amazon, West Africa and East Africa. We all work on issues of technological change. We all kind of stay attuned to gender relations. And some of this work also really explicitly focuses on kind of the effects of technology changes. And for example, Cristiano Lanzano, but also the work of Sabine Luning, also of Lorenzo De Angelo, looks into what happens when new technologies are introduced in an area, and how does that change production relations. And one of the major things that has happened in West Africa in the recent years is the introduction of cyanidation technology in small-scale mining. Cyanidation, so that means basically using cyanide to extract gold.
Okay.
And this has this kind of usage, or the appliance of application of cyanide has made it very interesting for miners to also mine, let's say, low-grade material, or material where they know that there's some gold, but it's not, previously it wasn't really interesting because it was so cumbersome to get it out. So what happened in the past is that in many sites, this kind of leftovers, they belong to female miners. But with the introduction of these new technologies that make these leftovers more interesting, there are also other actors that are moving into this domain and that are claiming these leftovers, hence taking them away from the female miners. So part of this work in West Africa or in Ghana shows that with the introduction of new technologies, production relations change, and also it might push out female miners, for example. It might further marginalize them, for example. I think when you look at gender, we see that ideas about what male and female miners or male and female mining actors can do. You can find these ideas everywhere. Specific configurations change, and dynamics in terms of the economy or in terms of technology influence then how such a configuration takes real shape. Of course, that pushes us also to look at these broader dynamics that influence how mining environments are organized, whether it is in terms of gender or something else. Also to come back to this idea of the underground again, of course, there are also ideas about who is allowed to access the underground and who is not. And what you often see is that female miners are not allowed to go underground. Sometimes, never, sometimes in specific periods of the month when they're having their period. There are a lot of ideas about what men and women can do, or what it means to be a male miner, what it means to be a female miner, what this entitles you to, or what does it exclude you from.
Mm.
Yeah, but what I find so interesting is that these configurations are so are so dynamic, and then to untangle and unravel why a specific setting or a specific configuration is can be observed. I think that is something something very interesting, and also something that anthropologists can do very well, because we have such an holistic approach to the social relations that we study.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. I think this is a good final word, and I'm really grateful that you shared your insights into the anthropology of mining, particularly in West Africa, with us today. And please let's keep in touch, and maybe another time, another project, you will give us another interview with new experience from the field. As you said, this field of the anthropology of mining is faced with really dynamic social contexts, economic changes, technological changes that entail new or trigger new social transformations, gender relations, etc. So a really fascinating topic, relevant for anthropology, and I guess we, from our class in Heidelberg, we have learned a lot today, and thank you.